Hi everybody, it's great to be back again, and today I'm particularly excited because I'm joined by Giovanni Cervellati, who himself joined IDC just a few months ago from a background as a data scientist. And he's got some really fantastic experience that he's bringing to IDC. He's already authored some great research that we'll point you to later. And I'm hoping that Giovanni's going to walk us through some of that right now. So it's great to see you, Giovanni. Thank you so much for coming along.
So hello, everyone. Hi, Neil, and thank you so much for inviting me here.
Yeah, so Giovanni, why don't you just start by quickly explaining a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, before joining IDC some months ago, I actually was a data analyst and data scientist back in Italy. And most of the time I dealt with advanced predictive analytics, especially with machine learning models. And the markets I worked for the most of the time were especially the financial one and the retail one.
Perfect. And so as I just mentioned, actually, Giovanni, you've not long ago written a report for IDC, which shares some insights from your time as a data scientist, explaining what you find organizations typically struggle with when they invest in analytics. So could you start off by sharing what you think is the most important issue that organizations face?
Okay, yes, as you already know, in my career as a data scientist, I found a lot of gaps and obstacles, but what was, in my opinion, the most important and most widespread one was not just one obstacle, but a class of them, and they were the cultural ones. That's because most of the management or even business colleagues I worked for or I worked with were not aware or weren't prepared for either the digital transformation or just to become a data-driven enterprise in their decision-making processes every day. If we want to go more in particular inside the obstacles, the most common I found were the resistance to innovations and the reliance on instinct. There were like two different ways of the same thing, and that means that they were not able to change their mindset to become more data-oriented. Other couple of cultural obstacles I found were lack of communications. So, for example, a lot of my colleagues or my bosses were not even aware of what the data team was doing. And finally, sometimes, even if all these intentions were good, the lack of data literacy or data culture inside the company itself hindered the process by slowing down all the innovations and upgrading of the operations.
Right. So it sounds, there's a whole lot of things around culture and literacy. That was really the big one, I guess. But what was I know in your report you talk about 3 major gaps. So what's the second one that's sort of after culture, if you like?
Okay, yes. And also, I mean, maybe as a data scientist, it's myself, that was the one I faced most often in everyday work, and it was the technical problem. So it's all the data related obstacles, and they were of course very important for my everyday work life. Let's make also here a couple of examples. For example, one of the biggest problem was the accessibility and availability of data, because sometimes the data you were looking for were lacking, but most of the time they were just very difficult to reach. Another side of the same problem is the lack of good metadata, because either you don't have the lineage of the data you are working with, or sometimes you just don't know what the data is, because the name of, for example, the name of the fields is really very difficult to understand for the natural language. And the last problem of this data category is that even if you are aware of the existence of this information, the communication with the IT was often not the best one. So business functions and also data functions had a lot of problems in communicating with the people who actually created the data. And so that really slowed the process down a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So, some really, really good insight here. So culture, number 1.
Data related
things, number 2. And then what's the third big gap that you were seeing in your work?
Okay, actually, this is a very strange problem, because once you, as a data scientist or a data analyst, have reached and you just crossed all these obstacles, the last one was very at the end of the process. It was a deliverability related one, because the deliverability of the outcomes was often very difficult to reach, because, for example, I give you a couple of examples. The first one was about the expenditures, so the costs. Sometimes the management was not aware of the costs associated with the final delivery, for example, of a campaign related to a data, to a machine learning model, for example. And the other time was also related to the deliverability, but it was more from the final functions, because somehow and sometimes, even if the management approved all the process, they did not have the technical capabilities to deliver, for example, a particular kind of campaign. So that actually was very frustrating, because you already have done all the job, but at the very end you got blocked by this deliverability problems.
Very interesting, very interesting. And I think that that's certainly one that it's not so often talked about. So very cool for you to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Well, I know we don't have much time on these little videos. So what I'll say is to anybody out there who wants to find out more, I'll put a link to Giovanni's report in the comments, so you can go and check that out. But thank you so much for your insight, Giovanni. I know it's going to be fantastic to have your experience and your insight as part of the IDC team. And thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Neil. I appreciate it.